please welcome to the stage panel moderator and VP, Alliance Relationships, Google Marketing Platform for Deloitte Digital, Sharon Harris.
All righty, so let's go for it. I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves and start off by explaining, why is this such a significant topic for you? Why don't you kick us off, Stephanie?
Great. Hi, I'm Stephanie Loring. I'm with Grubhub. I run the CRM Operations and Insights team there, so work on a lot of the front-end development and setup in Braze. Personalization has been huge for us. We have so much data, so much real-time data. People are crossing over from mobile to web, real-time watches, everything. So, kind of knowing what interests people, knowing what preferences they have, and really walking that line of how much knowledge we have and how important it is to get that right.
My name's Lizzie Landis. I am overseeing the lifecycle communications team at Ibotta. So we really focus on developing omni-channel programming to support all of the different touch points within our user journey at Ibotta, which is a rewarded shopping platform. And personalization's been really huge for us as well in terms of driving more engagement, increasing LTV over time for our users, but it's also becoming increasingly more important because there are so many different marketing messages that consumers are exposed to on a daily basis. So in order to make sure that your brand's message and voice is heard, you have to be speaking to them as if they are an individual and in a more human way.
My name is Paul Goldshteyn. I look after the iOS and Android apps at Glassdoor. Really, personalization is huge for us. We're trying to help users find the company and job that they love and they're looking for. So being able to provide the right relevant content and jobs as well to make sure they're making the right decision, it's really tough for us. We work on it.
I'm Maggie. I'm a product manager at Grindr. I touch most aspects of the app, from Braze to features. And personalization is really important for us because when a user is on the app, they have certain goals in mind and they want to get the best experience that they can while they're using the product. As a company, we also have goals, and so it's important to strike a balance between those two, using meaningful messaging that's important or that resonates with the user while also helping the company reach our KPIs.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. We all know consumer expectations around personalization have really evolved, and particularly with the rise of mobile. I'd love to hear from you, starting with you, Maggie. What does good personalization look like now?
Yeah, so I think that with the number of messages that users are getting from all aspects of their smartphones, their computers, email, text messages, it's important that it's important to give messaging that gives something to the user every time that we ask something of the user. So if we're asking them to participate in a campaign or engage with a message, click a button, it's important that that message is personalized to the user so that they don't feel like this company just takes and takes, and that whenever we are talking to them, they're also getting benefit from the message.
What about you, Stephanie? Over at Grubhub.
Grubhub.
You guys always know what I'm in the mood to eat tonight.
Yes, we do. Actually, that's a good example of where we tend to use it. Obviously, we have a lot of data, a lot of information on your order history and past information, but I think it's really important that we walk that line of how much information we do have and making sure that we're respecting the privacy. Just like Maggie said, having that two-way conversation and sort of making sure that they're really getting value out of it. So understanding that while we probably have quite a bit of information, what can we use to really improve your experience? So, we'll take things like your order history. We know which restaurants you like, which ones you've given better reviews to, your typical order time. So, maybe instead of saying, hey, you're walking in front of a restaurant right now, you might like this. I think we're going into knowing exactly what you've done in the past and then serving that up with enough time to say, okay, you probably order around this time. Let's go maybe a half an hour before that. Things we've tested, times we've tested, things like that to figure out the optimal time to send that. But to really give that nudge and that reminder, knowing where you're kind of already have an affinity for.
So Paul, you're leading apps at Glassdoor. What does good personalization on Glassdoor look like? People are looking for a job.
Well, we really try to learn what users are looking for when they come to Glassdoor. Some users are coming in just to learn, like, hey, this is what I'm going to be negotiating for with an employer. Some users want to know how their current employer is treating them and how is that similar to how other people are being treated or likewise. And some users are active job seekers, and they're coming in and they want to be shown the right jobs at the right time for the right companies. So really onboarding those users correctly, learning about what they're looking for to do on Glassdoor, and also showing them what we have from a product perspective is really, really important. And also explaining why we're offering them certain things. If they told us they're looking at jobs at IBM, we will show them a job at IBM if we know they're a product manager.
Awesome. So Lizzie, we're here at Braze's LTR, Humanity in Action. Tell us, what Braze tools, for instance, are you using? Liquid, connected content, API triggered campaigns? What do you use to really accomplish your personalization?
Yeah, so at Ibotta, we actually use all of those, and we really heavily integrate Liquid Logic into a lot of our campaigns so that we can have a lot of different personalization elements, from whether or not we're tailoring the copy depending on the user to make it feel a little bit more like a conversation. Or in one of our most sent emails, we actually have that we send after a user earns cash back with the app. We'll actually pull in as many details as where they went shopping, what they bought, how much money they actually earned. This campaign is API triggered, so it's really important that it sends in that contextual moment as soon as they earn money, because it's that dopamine moment we really want to capitalize when we're actually paying them money. And so we're actually validating the experience, we're delivering them that instant value and fulfilling the expectation that they had when they were actually joining our app. And then within this email, though it is our most sent email, we have really high engagement rates, so we include connected content to be able to pull in machine learning powered recommendations so that we can serve up additional content so that we can encourage subsequent transactions as well.
And what about you, Stephanie? What Braze tools are you using at Grubhub?
Yeah, same. We pretty much use that whole list there. Definitely the connected content and Liquid Logic are two of our big ones. Pulling in really customized recommendations and specific to each user, and then also ensuring that experience is good. So let's say we're expecting 4 recommendations, you only have 2 in your area, making sure that we're using those proper statements to say, okay, let's still send this email. We don't want to abort the whole send, but we can make it a better experience by only showing 2 recommendations to this person. So those are 2 of our top ones. Definitely action triggered campaigns as well, along with API triggered. We really kind of walk that balance of kind of across the board with the personalization. But really, I think the standard personalization that everyone's used to is, first name, last name, location. We try to add that behavioral component to it and really make that a part of it. So that's why the action-based ones are just as important, I think, as the API trigger that we're setting up as well, and have that good mix.
Awesome. Maggie, what Braze tools do you use at Grindr?
I don't want to sound like everyone else, but we use so many action-based triggers. Similarly to what Lizzie was saying about the dopamine triggering like a good reaction from the user, if we send a message when a user favorites another user, that's a positive action. So that would be a good time to send them a promotional message or something like that. Whereas if a user is blocking someone, that might be because they had a negative interaction with that other user, and that might not be the best time to trigger a campaign. We use lots of aspects of Braze, but I feel like action-based triggers are one of the most important, and clearly to other people as well.
Great. And Paul, what has been the impact of using these Braze tools on your consumers' experience?
It's been huge, especially as we've gotten, like the folks here, we use a lot of the tools, but as we've gotten more into action-based tools and more based on what is going on with new jobs being posted or new content that we find for a job that a user has applied for, we've seen users be really intrigued. As we've taken it to things like B2B, even if a user's application's been viewed, that's really relevant information they want to know. Give them that seeing of hey, I may hear back soon, and I may want to research soon. So we've been trying to adapt the whole funnel.
Awesome. Just to switch gears here, our panel is titled Smarter Data Makes Smarter Personalization. We live in an era where consumer consent is everything. Data privacy, everyone's very concerned about what's happening to their data. I'd love to hear from you, Stephanie. How are you using the data to make for really a better consumer experience?
Yeah, good question. It's definitely a strong balance that we have to follow right now. kind of respecting that privacy, but also asking for those permissions. So at Grubhub, we definitely respect the privacy and don't ask some very specific questions that maybe some other apps would ask, specifically to avoid that conversation, make sure we're being very compliant with that. But in other cases, especially where we do maybe ask for location, you've given that permission, that sort of thing. One of our more successful campaigns we've done right now is a weather-triggered campaign. And so we're using third-party data to bring in weather in your location, because it turns out when it rains, you want us to bring you your food. So, so that's been kind of a fun one that is a subtle piece of personalization that maybe you're not recognizing as much as a personalized campaign. But we've gotten a lot of comments even on social that they no longer look for the local weather. They wait till the Grubhub email comes in to find out it's raining. So.
Awesome. And what about you, Lizzie?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Stephanie said in terms of we have to be very careful about what data we're collecting, and there is a certain level of personalization that can almost feel too creepy in a way. So one of our campaigns that we have set up now that's actually been really powerful is a location-based campaign where we use location data to sort of build out segments, which has been really easy thanks to our partner Radar. They've been really great in terms of helping us achieve our goals for personalization and making sure we're identifying these high potential audiences who will transact in certain categories. If, for example, we know a user is going to a grocery store but they're not using Ibotta for grocery earnings, we can send them content so that we can promote that product to them and make sure that they're seeing the value and ultimately getting cash back that they deserve and that they should earn.
Oh, that's great. As we think about personalization, tell me what kinds of personalization, for instance, we talked about location, we talked a little bit about behavior, but what have you found to be the most impactful for your brand, and where have you gotten the best response from consumers? Maggie?
I think for Grindr, one of the ways that we've had the most response for personalization is our product marketing team does a great job in knowing the audience, and there's events all over the world where there's Pride events in every city pretty much around the world, and they will send out a campaign locally to each city, giving them some kind of premium feature for free or another promotional offer if they're free users. And I think that it's been very impactful for us to spend the time. It takes a long time to set up those campaigns for tens of cities around the world, and they're small and they're big, or whole countries and whatnot. So those kinds of campaigns, where even if it takes a little bit of legwork upfront, that it can really pay off in the end.
Have there been things in personalization that you've avoided?
One thing that is interesting about Grindr is that we don't do any email verification, and so sending emails to our users is not a way to personalize messages to them. Part of it is because of the population. A lot of people want to remain anonymous, and so we spend time respecting that. And it's not that we're avoiding it. It's just we know that it's not the best for our users in terms of what kind of messages they want to see.
All right. Paul, so tell us, what kinds of personalization have you used at Glassdoor? Or what things have you avoided doing?
Yeah, I think for us, as I mentioned before, behavior is huge. Like really asking the user what they're looking for and asking the user what things we can help them with and what industries they're looking for, what kind of salary are they looking to make, what locations would they be open to moving. I think the things we've generally avoided or haven't really focused much has been actually a location. A lot of things, like if a user's told us they're interested in a job in a specific location, which a lot of users do, we do make that a focus. But you're not going to walk by a Google office and we're going to tell you, hey, there's a job at Google. That'd be a little bit creepy and probably not something you'd want to see associated with the Glassdoor brand. So we definitely try to be very timely and helpful, but we try to make sure we don't straddle that line.
Okay, great. So, you've got this amazing audience out here, and I'd love to hear from each of you. What best practices or tips would you give to others who are looking to do better personalization, have a better consumer experience, ultimately see humanity in action?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, humanity in action, right? So remember that there's a human on the other end. In some ways, I feel like some of the technology's gotten so smart and so automated that we kind of forget about some of those little things that you need to keep in mind. And put yourself in their shoes, make sure that the experience and the expectation, understand what other messages you're sending them that maybe this could set off or that you need to separate. You don't want to necessarily send a follow-up email 20 minutes after they've just ordered, things like that we can recognize. I think one of the ones that we actually found an interesting learning from was in an interrupted session, so similar to an abandoned cart. You've started a session and then didn't finish your order. And initially, we were immediately following up to say, didn't you want to order from this restaurant? We were finding out that after looking at a lot of the data, that actually a lot of the ones that were being abandoned, the restaurant was closed. It wasn't delivering at that time. So one of those things that we think, oh, it's automated, send it in 15 minutes, but that was actually something we worked very closely with our data and our product team to say, hey, we need another trigger from our app saying this trigger of viewed a restaurant, but only when is open. So then you can follow up with that. So how do we market to people when it's closed? Is that more of a generic message? Is that, hey, you were looking for something in this style? Have you tried these recommendations? So just taking it that one step further, making sure you're really experiencing the process and understand who's on the other end of it and what they're actually going to receive across all of your communications.
What about you, Lizzie?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Stephanie's saying. I think, too, there's, to your point of, if the trigger is 15 minutes after that action has been taken, that could be, too soon. So I think there's a lot of A/B testing and optimizations that you can do there to really find, how can you create this more human-like conversation, but make sure that you're not crossing over the line where it's almost, it's creepy in a sense, so that you want to make sure it feels a little bit more serendipitous and that they're feeling like the user is feeling like they're discovering content rather than you're predicting their exact behavior and what they're going to do at that exact moment.
Now, before we walked on, Lizzie, you talked a little bit about how you guys are using AI and ML. Can you share a little bit more about that with the audience?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that we're actually using connected content to power machine learning powered content in our emails so that we're serving up content or offer recommendations to you based on what you're buying, what might be popular in the area that you're in, or what's more popular from a global perspective. And we're also currently working on implementing an AI-powered copywriting tool, so it will be interesting to see how that pairs with the personalization piece and how we see our engagement rates increase.
Awesome. What about you, Paul?
I'd say I'd answer in two ways. One is we really try to do a ton of research and talk to users on how they're using our product, not just the mobile app, but mobile app, desktop, mobile web, email products. How do the things tie in together, and what is that user journey? How should it look? And then the second part, I'd say, is having a really close relationship between marketing and product. I'd say that's one thing we really focus on at Glassdoor, making sure that user journey is the same across marketing and product. So we're driving towards the same KPIs and the same metrics. And the story says the same thing. If I'm building new features in an app, it's important that the messaging fits that as well.
And Maggie?
So I've worked at Grindr for a couple of years now, but before Grindr, I worked at small nonprofits, and I think that it can be very daunting to think about all of these ways to segment and send different content to users based on so many tools that Braze has. And I just want to say that I think that it's possible to do personalization on large scales with millions of users, but then it's also possible to pull a phone sheet and call a person and just make a note that they are interested in this, and it can be successful both ways. So no matter what size of company or user base you have, there's ways to personalize that will work for whatever you're trying to do.
So as you think about personalization, we live in an industry that's moving incredibly fast. There's constant changes. We know the importance of data. We know the importance of delivering a really strong consumer experience. As we march forward, what do you see as sort of being the next wave of personalization, say in the next 3 to 5 years?
Anyone? Yeah, I mean, I would say AI is probably, a significant area, and machine learning. I think just getting more and more sophisticated with how much information, we can receive, and I think also just the fact that it's going to learn with us and
Yeah.
change and grow. I think still finding that balance of just how much information we have is going to be a really important piece of that. I think understanding different even life cycles of where everyone is to get that different personalization and how much kind of history you have, but really understanding that you're actually going to kind of follow a consumer through their whole journey and how that message should be changed and catered throughout their life cycle with you.
What do you think won't happen?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, there's a lot of naysayers out there about, have we gone too far with the personalization? Do I really want you tracking me this much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to probably do both, right? So it's going to even get more and more sophisticated across channel. So I think you'd mentioned it a little bit, Paul, that obviously as you're walking through a certain area, if you've got your phone on you versus your desktop, and really I think the sophistication and how much information of being able to know that is definitely going to increase and grow and be available. I think some people will opt into that and actually expect it. I think that we're in a time where instant gratification and the expectation that, hey, I'm on my digital source, that I am being followed and I expect this to be something that's coming to me. I don't think the permissions of it will ever go away. I hope that people can also dictate back to brands to say, this is exactly how much information I want and how much I want you to share 2 ways. So I hope that stays.
All right. What's next on the horizon for Glassdoor, Paul?
I think that's interesting. I think a lot of the stuff that Stephanie was talking about at AI, I think we think about that a lot, and we think that's definitely in the future. I think one thing I've been thinking a lot is about timing. We've talked a lot about helpful and timely, but like really knowing when to message a user, and really knowing when to provide the right feature or the right experience, and when they're potentially looking for a job, and what that experience should look like for them is going to get more and more sensitive. I think guidelines are only going to get stricter with privacy. I think that's what we anticipate. So we're being very strict on not, what we use and what we don't use and how we message to users. So I think we're thinking ahead and GDPR is going to be probably across everywhere pretty quickly.
Yeah. Maggie, Grindr.
I think that what has already been said is so true. Users are getting smarter about what's being shown to them in advertising and also where their data is going and what data is being stored. So I think in the next couple of years, segmentation, especially at Grindr, is going to become an even bigger focus where we spend even more time figuring out users in different groups and what should be shown based on different action-based triggers, especially in the app, and behaviors that they take inside the app, while maintaining the balance that consumers and users are more focused on making sure that their data is protected. So I think more segmentation while keeping in mind that it's smart segmentation based on data that people feel comfortable with.
And Lizzie.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that everyone has said so far. I think AI will be really interesting to see how that plays into personalization, whether or not it is a little bit more predictive or if it actually learns how to speak in a very human manner. I think there is that balance that you have to find. So again, doing a lot of optimization and testing in that realm. And I would also say that as our consumers become more aware about what data we're collecting, is how to make sure that we're creating the best experience so that they see the value in a more contextual manner as to why we use that data to actually curate a better experience and serve them up the right content that they need at the right time.
Okay, so we're in the final minutes of our discussion. I'd love to hear at least 30 seconds from each of you as you think about the title, Smarter Data Makes Smarter Personalization. Why?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be included in your mix. You need that information to make smart decisions, smart messaging. Even within Grubhub, we're actually encouraged to use the app and order our lunches throughout the week on the app. Be your best product tester. I think the fact that we all know the experience you go through pickup, delivery, everything, I think that makes us all better marketers. So obviously, at the end of the day, the whole conference really about the humanity. We've brought that up a lot to don't forget that there are humans listening on the other side. Make sure you're experiencing it. Make sure that you actually know your product back and forth, and that really what you're highlighting is the experience you expect your users to have as well.
All right, quickly, Lizzie.
Yeah, I would say that we've even found at Ibotta through research with our users that they're actually expecting a personalized experience, and that when we don't serve them content that seems relevant to them, they get this bad taste in their mouth. So making sure that we are actually creating that relationship between our users and our brand so that they're finding the value in a more convenient fashion.
All right, and final seconds, Paul and Maggie.
I'd say same, deliver on your promise. If you're going to ask a user what they're looking for or what they would prefer to do or what they would prefer to find in your app or your website, actually show them what they're looking for. A lot of trust can be lost if you ask a user, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to, what job would you like? And they say, I want to work in product management or marketing, but you start serving them jobs in retail, they may not be very happy. So creating that balance between offering them options, but giving them what they're actually looking for.
And final word, Maggie.
I would just say that it's important to remember that user experience is always key in every product or company. If you don't give users important, or if you don't give them relevant content, then they're not going to be as interested in your product. And using data to do that is one of the best ways. Everyone has already said, use the product yourself, all of that.
All right, wonderful. Well, that's it for our discussion on smarter data makes smarter personalization. Thank you to all of my panelists, Stephanie, Lizzie, Paul, and Maggie.